Southwest Virginia communities are in the process of recovery from a major natural disaster after Hurricane Helene made landfall in the New River Valley. In late September, the storm led to unprecedented flooding, leaving 48 families displaced and many more without basic necessities like food, clothing, and water. Disaster relief efforts are ongoing as residents in the hardest hit areas are still reeling from the storm.
We just kind of stood here and just watched campers lift up, float, leave, decks lift up, float away. I mean, it was unbelievable how much power the water had and how fast it came up.
In some areas of Giles County, Hurricane Helene dropped more than 5 inches of rain in just 2 days. Runoff into the New River pushed the water's edge to more than 24 feet high. Virginia Almond and her neighbors were left with no choice but to evacuate in the middle of the night, many leaving behind treasured belongings in their search for higher ground.
The camper that floated away here, the one that we watched float away, everything they had here for the summertime washed away with it. One of the ladies that manages the campground, they moved their camper, but they didn't think about getting everything off of their deck. So all of her belongings and all of her clothes and a lot of their tools washed away down the river. The camper that you can see that's in just shambles, they were here just about I know they were here every weekend. They were here a lot during the week. And all of their belongings, that camper, when it turned over, it actually bursted the end of it out, and it was washing a lot of their belongings out of that camper, and we have no idea where they are. But everything that was in any of the campers, 90% of it, I say, was trashed because they couldn't save it.
In the aftermath of such an extreme natural disaster, Giles County residents are on a long road to recovery. Exploring this concept, Dr. Liesel Ritchie investigates resilience and well-being in rural communities in the aftermath of disaster.
Community resilience has to do with the community's ability to bounce back, essentially, from external threats and, in my case, hazards and disasters such as tornadoes and earthquakes and other kinds of events such as toxic contamination.
While investigating resilience post-disaster, Dr. Ritchie evaluates 7 pillars of community wellness. These include natural, financial, built, human, and political capital, but she says the 2 most important are social and cultural capital. Social capital is based on the networks and relationships among people who live and work in a society. Cultural capital is a collection of social assets that increase one's chance of success.
And social and cultural capital are some of the most important things for community resilience because they have those bonds in the community membership. They've got shared experiences both prior to the exacting event that we're talking about and then during the event and immediately following the event. They're all in the same situation. And so when we talk about these kinds of events, those forms of capital are really critical to community recovery and having plentiful different forms of capital, because you can have a lot of financial capital, but if you don't have good social capital and people coming together in determining how you want to spend that financial capital, then it's not going to work very well and community tension can really arise.
According to Dr. Ritchie, support of any kind is usually welcome after a disaster, but the organization and distribution of aid can be an overwhelming process for small communities.
Building social capital takes a long time, so hopefully people can work together at the ground level. You know, we say that always the first responders are local residents because they're the ones on the ground.
One man in Giles County stepped up to use his social capital in the town of Narrows, offering rooms in the basement of his church for flood victims to find shelter after the storm, and creating a central location for food, water, and clothing donations that poured in following Helene.
My wife and I, the day after the flood, we were actually riding around looking and we were telling each other that, we need to do something. So we both got a little frustrated at each other. And she said, I don't know what to do. She said, what are we going to do? I said, I don't know. And of course, when I get talking like that, I get loud. When I preach, I get loud. But she said, don't get mad at me. I said, I'm not mad at you. But I said, I'm frustrated. We need to do something. So we called up 4 or 5 women, went and bought some food. Walmart donated $100 on the food, and we just went to Walmart and bought food and started making sandwiches. And so late that night, I was across the river handing out sandwiches as they was making them. And so the next day, that was a Saturday night, so Sunday we held church. And when we got out of church, my wife was on the phone with someone that owned the trailer courts down there at Stockpen that got wiped away. It displaced, well, there was, I don't know how many families, but out of 4 families, there was 12 kids, 10 children and 6 adults. So that night, I just put out a plea on Facebook, you know, we need beds, can anybody help? Well, the next day, which was on a Monday, the back of the church back here looked like Grand Central Station. People just started flooding in from everywhere, and they said, do you need water? Do you need this? And, you know, just one thing led to another, and God just opened the door, and we had people working and stacking and then opening up rooms, trying to get rooms ready in case people needed to come and stay. And it just one thing led to another, and here, 30 some days later, we're still working with it. So
Absolutely. It sounds like there's been a real outpouring of support from the community.
it has.
With you, your family and friends, people from the church.
Yeah.
What would you say you've learned during this time in these past few weeks following the storm?
Well, I look back and I was amazed at the people that came to help us prepare and get ready to help flood victims. There was people from other churches. There was people that didn't go to church. The Nares football team, they came over. I mean, it was just an outpouring. People wanted to help and to help do things to get ready for these flood victims. So, you know, I look back and I've been interviewed. This is my second time, third time, and it's one thing that I try to make sure that I tell people, you know, this community came together and with such an outpouring of love. It was amazing how God just used everybody. It's still mind-blowing. It's been a lot of stories, a lot of things where I could see God was moving in people's lives. So it's been an amazing walk this last month or so. So, yeah, I'll never be the same.